The Galactic Community Hub, or GCH as it was commonly known, hung in space like a jewel, a massive masterpiece of engineering that housed thousands of sentient species representatives. Its crystalline structures and towering spires reflected the light of a neutral star, sending prismatic beams across its rotating rings and habitation zones. Today, the normally bustling corridors seemed unusually tense, the air thick with anticipation. In the Grand Summit Chamber, a massive circular room with rising tiers of specialized podiums, Ambassador Alara Vance stood with impeccable posture. Her steel-gray diplomatic uniform bore the simple emblem of the United Terran Federation, humanity's collective governmental body. Though her face remained composed, the slight tightening around her eyes betrayed her tension. This would be humanity's fifth formal petition for full membership in the GCH, with all the rights and privileges therein, including veto power on security matters. Beside her stood Theron, her Xylosian advisor. The plant-like being's bark-textured skin had darkened with age, the luminescent fronds that served as sensory organs gently swaying as they absorbed the emotional atmosphere of the chamber. 50 years of observing humanity's struggles in the galactic community had made him both a loyal ally and a voice of tempered wisdom. "They've had 50 years to recognize our contributions," Alara whispered, barely moving her lips. "Medical technologies freely shared, protected trade routes, disaster relief to dozens of worlds." Theron's response came as a subtle vibration that only Alara could hear through their specialized communication device. "Patience, Ambassador. Old powers rarely relinquish influence willingly." The chamber fell silent as Grand Chancellor Kthar of the Krok Confederacy rose to his full height, nearly 3 meters of scaled, muscular reptilian authority. His neck frill expanded, displaying warning colors as he addressed the chamber. "Once again, we find ourselves entertaining the presumptuous request of the Terrans," he began, his translator conveying his deep, rumbling voice. "A species barely 5 centuries into interstellar travel, demanding equal footing with civilizations that have guided galactic affairs for millennia." Alara maintained her diplomatic smile, though her knuckles whitened as she gripped the edge of her podium. "The United Terran Federation has demonstrated commendable enthusiasm in their contributions," Kthar continued, the pause clearly intended as condescension. "However, their internal history of violence, their emotional volatility, and their unpredictable decision-making makes them unsuitable for the responsibilities of full membership." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber, primarily from representatives of the oldest and most powerful civilizations. Kthar's frill expanded further, encouraged. "Let us not forget that these contributions are transparent attempts to curry favor. The Terrans seek influence beyond their maturity. One need only examine their planetary history, centuries of warfare amongst themselves, to understand why entrusting them with veto power over security matters would be imprudent." Alara's eyes flashed, a cold determination replacing diplomatic pleasantry. She glanced at Theron, who subtly shook his head, a gesture of profound disappointment, not at her, but at the chamber's predictable response. "The summit recognizes Ambassador Vance of the United Terran Federation," announced the neutral AI facilitator. Alara stepped forward, her voice clear and controlled. "Grand Chancellor Kthar's concerns about humanity's readiness are noted. However, I wish to remind the distinguished representatives that for 5 decades, humanity has served as an observer member, contributing technologies, resources, and assistance whenever called upon." She activated a holographic display showing statistics of human aid missions, technological contributions, and security collaborations. "We have met every criterion for full membership as outlined in the GCH Charter, Article 7, Subsection 12. This is our 5th petition. Each previous denial has been based on subjective assessments rather than objective criteria." Kthar's dismissive gesture cut through her presentation. "Criteria can be fulfilled while the spirit remains unmet, Ambassador." Your species still measures its civilization in mere centuries, while many of us measure in millennia. Your emotional responses to disappointment alone demonstrate why you are not ready. The chamber erupted in a mixture of support for Cthar and uncomfortable silence from the smaller, less influential powers who secretly sympathized with humanity's position. Elara stood motionless for several seconds, her face unreadable. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost all warmth. In light of this response, the United Terran Federation will be temporarily suspending all contributions and participation in GCH affairs while we reassess our position and future strategic priorities. The announcement sent a shock wave through the chamber. Such a move was unprecedented. Most petitioners simply accepted their rejection and continued their participation, hoping for eventual acceptance. This is exactly the emotional reaction that proves our point, Cthar declared triumphantly. Sulking away when you don't get what you want. Elara didn't respond to the taunt. She simply collected her materials, nodded respectfully to the chamber, and departed with Theron at her side. Her silence was more unsettling than any retort could have been. As the grand doors of the chamber closed behind them, Theron finally spoke aloud. They believe this is merely an emotional display. Let them believe what they wish, Elara replied, her voice low and steady. Authorization, Vance Elarum, UTF Diplomatic Corps. Aegis Protocol, Activation Phase 1. Theron's luminescent fronds dimmed momentarily, the equivalent of a human's widening eyes. So the rumors were true. Aegis exists. Did you doubt it? A ghost of a smile crossed Elara's face as they walked toward the UTF diplomatic vessel. I had hoped. Differently, Theron admitted. So had we all, Elara said softly. For 50 years, we hoped. Back on Earth, in a facility buried deep beneath the Antarctic ice sheet, Admiral Marcus Thorne reviewed the incoming transmission from Ambassador Vance. His weathered face, creased by decades of service and strategic planning, remained impassive as the authorization code triggered a cascade of secure communications throughout the solar system and beyond. Aegis Protocol, Activation Phase 1, confirmed, he stated for the record. Notify all command posts. Operation Velvet Glove is now active. The command center hummed with focused activity as men and women who had trained for this day for years executed their roles with precision. The Admiral's eyes drifted to the large holographic display showing the position of UTF assets throughout known space, many of which had never appeared on any official registry or scan. Admiral, a communications officer called, Dr. Eris Thorne is requesting your presence in Laboratory 7. Marcus nodded, rising from his chair. Colonel Herrera has command. I'll return shortly. Laboratory 7 was located in the deepest level of the facility, where the most sensitive research was conducted. When the doors slid open, Marcus was greeted by his daughter's familiar intensity. Dr. Eris Thorne barely looked up from her workstation, surrounded by floating holographic equations and simulation results. The Void Shroud deployment was successful in the Proxima trials, she reported without preamble. All test vessels maintained complete sensor invisibility for the full 72 hours. The kinetic nullifiers have also been miniaturized to the point where we can now deploy them via drone swarms rather than requiring dedicated platforms. Marcus approached, studying the simulations and the power requirements. Reduced by 60% since the last iteration. Eris finally looked up, her sharp features softened momentarily by a flicker of filial recognition. We're ready, father. More than ready. Marcus placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder, a rare display of affection in their professional environment. I never doubted your team's capabilities, Eris. I only questioned whether we would need them. 50 years of rejection didn't leave much room for optimism, she replied. They've never seen us as equals, just useful primitives. Perhaps they needed a demonstration of what primitives are capable of when pushed. Marcus turned as his secure communicator chimed. Thorne here. Admiral, we have a situation. Croc Battle Group, detected on course for the Tarsus colony. 7 vessels, including 2 heavy cruisers. Their trajectory suggests they're using our space as a transit corridor to reach the Mithran system. Marcus's expression hardened. The Mithrans requested our assistance last month when Croc mining operations began encroaching on their territories. Yes, sir. GCH denied our petition to intervene, citing regional security prerogatives of established members. Prepare Intercept Package Theta 9. Non-lethal measures only. This is a warning, not an engagement. Marcus's voice was cold, precise. Deploy when they cross the Rigel boundary marker. Sir, that's well within recognized UTF space. Exactly. They need to understand that boundaries have consequences. Marcus turned back to his daughter. How quickly can you prepare a demonstration package of the nullifiers? Eris was already typing commands into her console. Deployment ready in 20 minutes. Full effectiveness guaranteed. Do it. Aboard the Croc flagship Dominion's Claw, Commander Vex then stood on the command deck, his scales gleaming under the harsh lighting. The 7-ship battle group moved with confident precision toward the Mithran system, where a troublesome colony had been refusing Croc mining rights. We are entering Terran-claimed space, Commander, his navigation officer reported. Vex then made a dismissive gesture with his clawed hand. The humans have no means to enforce their territorial claims this far out. Their supposed boundaries are a political fiction tolerated by the GCH. Maintain course. Sir, we're receiving a transmission on all frequencies. Ignore it, Vex then ordered. Their diplomatic protests are meaningless without enforcement capability. The navigation officer hesitated. Sir, the message is very brief. It simply states, restricted area. Turn back. Vexthen's neck frill expanded in amusement. The audacity of primitives never ceases to entertain. Proceed as planned. 15 minutes later, as the battle group crossed the invisible boundary the humans had designated the Rigel marker, something unprecedented occurred. Without warning, every weapon system aboard all 7 Croc vessels simultaneously powered down. Moments later, their engines sputtered and deactivated, leaving the ships drifting in space with only life support and minimal systems functioning. On the command deck of the Dominion's Claw, chaos erupted. Report, Vexthen demanded, his frill now fully extended in alarm. All offensive systems are non-responsive, Commander. Engineering reports total propulsion failure. There's no damage, no energy surge. Systems simply stopped. That's impossible. Scan for attack vessels. Sensors detect nothing, sir. Whatever did this, we didn't see it coming and can't see it now. A communication officer interrupted, his voice shaking. Commander, we're receiving another transmission. Vex then hissed in frustration. Display it. A simple text message appeared on the main screen. Croc vessels have violated UTF sovereign space. Return to your territory immediately. This is your only warning. Ow! Vex then snarled, striking the console with his clawed hand. How have they done this? No answer came from his stunned crew. After 3 hours of futile attempts to restore systems, the Croc vessels suddenly regained minimal propulsion capabilities, just enough to limp back to their territory with their weapons still disabled. The incident with the Croc battle group sent shockwaves through the GCH. Grand Chancellor Kthar demanded an emergency session, where he publicly accused the UTF of technological terrorism. Alara Vance, now back on Earth, responded through an open-channel broadcast. The United Terran Federation was merely enforcing its sovereign rights within legally claimed space. No injuries occurred. No vessels were damaged. The Croc battle group was simply prevented from using our territory to conduct operations against the Mithran colony, a people who had requested our protection. We will continue to enforce our boundaries with proportionate measures when necessary. The subtle emphasis on proportionate was not lost on the GCH representatives. If this was a proportionate response, what might a disproportionate one look like? 2 weeks later, a more dramatic demonstration occurred. The Orion Consortium, a powerful corporate alliance with ties to the Croc Confederacy, had been operating an illegal resource extraction facility in the Neptune Nebula, an area the UTF had claimed decades ago, but which the GCH had refused to recognize despite clear evidence of human exploration predating any other species' activity there. The facility, with its crew of over 200, was processing rare elements used in advanced weapons manufacturing when something extraordinary happened. Without warning or apparent cause, the entire facility's external components began to disassemble themselves. Robotic drones, invisible to sensors, meticulously removed every piece of mining equipment while leaving the habitation modules intact. The bewildered crew watched in astonishment as their billion-credit operation was systematically dismantled around them. When the process was complete, they found themselves aboard fully functioning habitat modules with 6 months of supplies and a small evacuation vessel attached. A message appeared on all their communication systems. UTF property has been reclaimed. All personnel will be provided safe passage to the nearest neutral port. Further incursions will not be tolerated. By the time Orion Consortium security vessels arrived, they found only empty space where their facility had been. The extracted resources and equipment had vanished without a trace. The GCH fell into disarray as news of these incidents spread throughout the galaxy. Smaller powers began distancing themselves from anti-human policies, fearing they might be on the wrong side of what increasingly appeared to be a significant shift in the balance of power. Theron, still maintaining his advisory position at the GCH, found himself approached by representatives from species that had previously ignored human diplomatic overtures. "How long has the UTF possessed these capabilities?" asked the Ilderan ambassador, her crystalline structure vibrating with concern. "I am not privy to UTF military secrets," Theron replied carefully. "But I would suggest that focusing on how long is less productive than considering why now." "They were provoked," the Volturi delegate interjected, his gelatinous form pulsing with agitation. 50 years of contributions, 50 years of requesting equal standing, 50 years of being treated as lesser beings despite clear evidence of their technological and cultural sophistication. "The Croc and their allies pushed too far," agreed another representative. Theron remained silent, letting the realization spread through the gathered diplomats. The UTF had never been weak, they had been patient, and that patience had finally run out. Meanwhile, Thar was organizing a response. In a closed session with his strongest allies, the Grand Chancellor pushed for decisive action. "We cannot allow these primitives to challenge the established order," he declared, his scales flushed with rage. "They have revealed aggressive capabilities developed in secret while pretending to be peaceful contributors. This deception alone proves their unfitness for membership." "What do you propose?" asked the hegemon of the vast dominion, a longtime Croc ally. "A show of overwhelming force," Thar replied. "We will assemble the largest battle fleet seen in a generation. 2,000 vessels from our combined forces will advance on their home system. They may have some clever tricks that worked against small groups, but nothing could stand against such might." "And when they surrender?" inquired another ally. Thar's mouth opened in what passed for a smile among his kind. "We will graciously accept their surrender, dismantle their military capabilities, and place their worlds under protective supervision for the next few centuries, until they've proven themselves civilized enough for limited autonomy." The plan moved forward with remarkable speed. Within 3 weeks, the combined fleet of the Croc Confederacy and its allies began assembling at the edge of what was considered UTF space. The show of force was deliberately intimidating. Warships of all classes, from massive dreadnoughts to agile destroyers, formed an armada that stretched across thousands of kilometers. An emergency session of the GCH was convened as the fleet's assembly could not be hidden. Thar addressed the chamber with characteristic arrogance. "The recent acts of technological aggression by the United Terran Federation cannot go unanswered. As responsible stewards of galactic peace, we have assembled a peacekeeping force to secure potentially dangerous UTF military assets and ensure they pose no further threat to established order." Murmurs filled the chamber. Even species that had been indifferent to human concerns were disturbed by the scale of the response. Theron rose to speak, his normally calm demeanor replaced by urgent intensity. This assembly is making a catastrophic miscalculation. I implore you to reconsider this action before it is too late. Your affection for your human friends is noted, Advisor Theron, Kthar replied dismissively. But the time for words has passed. The UTF has been instructed to power down all defensive systems and prepare for inspection by our peacekeeping force. They have 24 hours to comply before we advance. You are not listening, Theron insisted, his luminescent fronds pulsing with stressed light patterns. What you have witnessed thus far is not the full extent of UTF capabilities. It is merely what they chose to reveal. More empty threats? Kthar laughed, joined by several allies. If they possess truly formidable defenses, why hide them for 50 years while enduring our supposed disrespect? Theron's response was quiet but carried throughout the silent chamber. Perhaps they were hoping never to need them. Perhaps they were giving diplomacy every possible chance to succeed. The emergency session concluded with the GCH formally demanding UTF surrender. A message was transmitted to Earth, demanding immediate and unconditional capitulation to prevent complete destruction. When the 24-hour deadline expired, the massive fleet began its advance toward the Sol system. Intelligence reports had detected no unusual activity from UTF forces, no fleet movements, no defensive repositioning. This apparent inaction was interpreted as paralysis in the face of overwhelming force, further bolstering Kthar's confidence. As the Armada crossed the outer boundary of the Sol system, specifically designated as a red line through secret diplomatic channels, Command Vessel Eternal Dominion prepared to address the UTF one final time before beginning military operations. Supreme Commander Kraske, standing on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, was composing his ultimatum when the censor officer suddenly cried out. Spatial distortions detected. Multiple locations surrounding the fleet. Defensive posture. Raise shields, Kraske ordered, but before his command could be fully implemented, the impossible happened. Surrounding the entire 2,000-ship armada, hundreds of spatial distortions rippled into existence. These were not the emergence points of conventional vessels, but rather tears in the fabric of space itself. From these distortions emerged not ships, but pure energy constructs, glowing, shifting forms that defied conventional understanding. What are those? Kraske demanded. Unknown, Commander. They're generating energy signatures unlike anything in our database. Before further analysis could be conducted, the energy constructs activated. Waves of invisible force washed over the fleet. Ship after ship reported the same phenomena. Weapon systems completely disabled. Propulsion systems shut down. Shield generators offline. Communications restricted to internal channels only. The massive armada, representing the combined military might of the galaxy's oldest powers, drifted helplessly in space. On 50 of the command vessels, including the Eternal Dominion, an even more astonishing event occurred. Shimmering fields of energy enveloped them completely, cutting them off from the rest of the fleet. These vessels began to move, not under their own power, but drawn by invisible forces toward the inner solar system. The remaining vessels of the fleet could only watch as their command ships were systematically separated and pulled away at increasing speed, vanishing into the distance toward Jupiter and Saturn. The entire process took less than 15 minutes. Not a single shot had been fired. Not a single life had been lost. The greatest armada ever assembled had been neutralized with surgical precision and apparent ease. Throughout the galaxy, on thousands of worlds, beings gathered around communication devices as an unprecedented broadcast began. The image was of a stern-faced human male in a dark uniform adorned with subtle insignia of rank. I am Admiral Marcus Thorne of the United Terran Federation, Supreme Commander of the Aegis Protocol. This is not a negotiation offer. This is a statement of reality. The Admiral's voice was calm, measured, devoid of emotion, which somehow made his words all the more chilling. The United Terran Federation has endured contempt and underestimation for too long. You mistook our patience for weakness. You rejected our peaceful efforts with arrogance. The broadcast showed images of the now immobilized fleet floating helplessly in space. The fleet of the Croc Confederacy and its allies has been completely neutralized. Any further hostile action will result in total and systematic destruction. We do not desire war. We desire the respect we have rightfully earned. The image shifted to show the captured command vessels being drawn toward massive structures orbiting Jupiter and Saturn, structures that had somehow remained hidden from galactic observation for decades. These facilities dwarfed anything known to exist in UTF territory, their true purpose ominous in its ambiguity. The Galactic Community Hub Summit Council has 24 Earth Standard Hours to reconsider the UTF's position and address our legitimate demands for equal rights and common security. After that time, the Aegis Protocol will implement whatever measures are necessary to ensure humanity's survival and prosperity at any cost. The broadcast ended abruptly. Across the galaxy, stunned silence fell over countless worlds as the implications became clear. The humans had never been the primitive newcomers they'd been treated as. They had been preparing, building, and waiting while giving peace every possible chance. In the GCH Summit Chamber, pandemonium reigned. Thar-S supporters, watching their military advantage evaporate in minutes, desperately called for galaxy-wide mobilization against the human threat. We must unite all forces. Attack their worlds before they can consolidate their position, shouted one representative. With what? Came the response from the Solarian Conclave's ancient delegate. Did you not see what they did to our combined fleet? 2,000 vessels neutralized without a single casualty. What could the rest of our forces possibly accomplish except provide them with more ships to capture? Theron stood silently in his position, watching the collapse of the old order. Several representatives approached him cautiously. Did you know, asked a Venlaxian diplomat, about their true capabilities? I suspected, Theron admitted. I warned this council repeatedly that humans should not be underestimated, that their technological development rate outpaces most known species, that their history of internal conflict has given them a unique perspective on warfare and defense. But few listened. What will they do now? The question came from many voices at once. Theron's fronds swayed gently. That depends entirely on you. They asked for equality. They asked for respect. They asked for 50 years. What they did not ask for was dominance, though it appears they could have taken it at any time. As the 24-hour deadline approached, the GCH Summit Council gathered for an emergency vote. Thar, his position untenable after the military disaster, had been forced to resign. The vote was overwhelmingly in favor of accepting UTF's demands for full membership and Security Council privileges. A high-level delegation, including Theron, was hastily dispatched to the solar system to negotiate terms, though all understood that negotiation was largely a formality at this point. The GCH delegation was escorted to Jupiter Primus Station, a massive orbital complex that had somehow remained hidden from galactic observation through technologies beyond current understanding. The station's scale was humbling, a structure hundreds of kilometers across, clearly capable of servicing and producing vessels far larger than anything in known space. They were received in a stark, minimalist conference room. Ambassador Ilera Vance and Admiral Marcus Thorne represented the UTF, their demeanor professional but cold. "Welcome to Jupiter Primus," Ilera stated without warmth. "I wish these circumstances were different, but we adapt to the reality we are given, not the one we might prefer." The head of the GCH delegation, an elder statesman from a neutral power, spoke carefully. The Summit Council has voted to grant the United Terran Federation full membership status with all attendant rights and privileges, including Security Council representation and veto authority. Admiral Thorne's expression remained impassive. That offer might have been acceptable yesterday. Today, circumstances have changed. The delegation members exchanged nervous glances as Ilera activated a holographic display showing a comprehensive document. "This is the new Galactic Charter," she explained. It outlines our vision for a reformed interstellar community, one based on actual equality, mutual security, and balanced development. The document detailed a complete restructuring of the GCH to be renamed the United Galactic Council, the establishment of a peacekeeping force with UTF oversight, non-proliferation agreements for certain weapons technologies, and fair trade protocols with enforcement mechanisms. This isn't a negotiation, one delegate protested weakly. This is a complete rewriting of galactic governance. Yes, Admiral Thorne confirmed without apology. The old system failed. It protected entrenched interests at the expense of emerging species. It allowed powerful members to exploit weaker ones with impunity. It rejected peaceful cooperation in favor of maintaining an outdated hierarchy. Alera's tone softened slightly. We are not seeking to conquer or dominate. We could have done that at any point in the past 2 decades, if that had been our goal. What we propose is a more stable, more equitable system, with checks and balances that prevent any single power, including ourselves, from abusing their position. The delegation reviewed the document in stunned silence. What shocked the most was not the UTF's demand for power, but the restraint those demands showed. There were no reparations demanded, no punitive measures against those who had opposed them, no territorial concessions required. Instead, the document outlined a vision for galactic governance that, while clearly placing the UTF in a position of significant influence, also created mechanisms to prevent the abuses of the previous system. You've had this prepared for some time, Theron observed, speaking for the first time since their arrival. Admiral Thorne nodded. We hoped never to need it. Every year, every rejection, we updated it, always preferring that diplomatic means would make it unnecessary. We have questions about specific provisions, the lead delegate stated, attempting to regain some semblance of negotiating position. Of course, Alera replied. We will answer them all, but the core principles are non-negotiable. As the discussions proceeded, Dr. Eris Thorne entered the room briefly to deliver a data package to her father. Her presence caused a stir among the delegation, many of whom had seen her recent broadcast. The day after the fleet's neutralization, Dr. Thorne had appeared on galactic channels to present a scientific explanation of some basic principles behind UTF's advanced technologies. She had not revealed classified details, but had demonstrated that their capabilities were based on deeper understanding of universal principles rather than inexplicable anomalies. The presentation had further shaken galactic confidence as it suggested the technological gap might be even wider than the military demonstration had indicated. After 12 hours of discussion, the delegation requested time to consult with the Summit Council. They were permitted to return to their vessel with a secure communication channel. The response came within hours, full acceptance of the new Galactic Charter's core provisions, with requests for clarification on implementation details only. The era of Croc dominance and old power politics had ended. A new galactic order was emerging, one shaped by human vision, but, perhaps ironically, more inclusive and balanced than what had come before. 10 years after what became known as the Sol Incident, the galaxy had transformed. The United Galactic Council operated under the new charter, with Ambassador, now Secretary General, Alera Vance serving as its first human leader. The transition had not been without challenges, but the system had proven more stable and equitable than its predecessor. Admiral Marcus Thorne remained head of the Aegis Protocol, which now functioned as the ultimate deterrent force, rarely seen but always present. The captured command vessels from the Croc fleet had been returned after the Charter's ratification, their crews unharmed but forever changed by what they had witnessed within the human facilities. Dr. Eris Thorne continued her research, but now directed significant resources toward selective sharing of non-weapons technologies, clean energy systems, advanced medical techniques, and sustainable resource extraction methods became available to UGC member species that adhered to Charter provisions. Theron held an important advisory role within the UGC, helping other species adapt to and understand human methodologies. His unique perspective as both friend to humanity and member of an ancient species made him invaluable as an intermediary. Cthar lived in exile on a remote world, a forgotten figure and cautionary tale about the dangers of arrogance. The Pax Humana, as some called it, had brought a decade without major conflicts. Minor disputes were quickly resolved by UGC peacekeeping forces, trained and partially equipped by the UTF, but inclusive of all member species. The initial fear of humanity had gradually shifted to a respect tinged with wariness. Other species recognized that humans, despite their overwhelming advantage, seemed focused on stability and controlled order rather than domination or destruction. Yet beneath the surface, an undercurrent of tension remained. The Aegis Protocol was the proverbial elephant in the room, the power that all knew existed but few fully understood or felt comfortable discussing. On the observation deck of the UGC hub, Secretary General Alara Vance stood watching the busy shipping lanes below. Vessels of countless designs moved in orderly patterns, commerce flowing freely between worlds that had once been suspicious or openly hostile toward one another. Theron joined her, his aged form moving with deliberate grace. They call it Pax Humana, you know. Some whisper it with gratitude, others with quiet resentment. Alara sighed softly. We never wanted this, Theron. We only wanted to be heard. But perhaps, to be heard in a noisy universe, sometimes you need a voice that cannot be ignored. She gazed out at the distant stars. The question is, can we maintain this balance? Or will the power we've been forced to wield eventually change us? Her personal device chimed with a priority notification, a classified report from Aegis Protocol about a potential new threat from unexplored space. Alara took a deep breath. Peace was always fragile. The struggle to maintain it, and to preserve humanity's essential nature in the process, continued unabated. As she prepared to respond to the notification, Alara reflected on how far they had come. From dismissed newcomers to architects of a new galactic order. The price of respect had been high, but perhaps necessary. The true test would be what they did with that respect now that they had it. Humanity stands at a crossroads, she said quietly to Theron. We've shown the galaxy our strength. Now we must show them our wisdom. Theron's fronds glowed with gentle affirmation. Perhaps that was always the greater challenge. With a nod of agreement, Alara turned from the observation window. There was work to be done, a fragile peace to maintain, and a future to shape. Hopefully one worthy of the power they had revealed to a terrified galaxy.